One of the most common call-outs I go to is toilets running into the pan, whether that be overflowing from the fill valve or the flush valve not shutting off properly. Due to the fact that they are mostly all plastic these days, they're a nightmare and they are prone to failing. This is actually one of the more accessible ones, as I could access through the top and through the front panel. You bring the front panel off, and then I needed to cut around the silicone to get the bottom panel off as well. The flush valve was the issue on this one, but due to living in a hard water area, the limescale often builds up on the cradle, and to buy the parts, it's sometimes more cost effective to just buy a new cistern. So I gave the customer the option and they decided to go with the cistern, and it's a grower, so it's actually quite straightforward swap. So this one was actually a bit of a pain to get out because the clips that should slide over were getting stuck on the wood at the back. So I actually had to take the clips off to remove it. As you can see, I was struggling here to pull it through. So I took these clips off and it was so solid in there because they couldn't get past the timber. So I just removed them and got rid of them in the end. If you find my videos useful, if you could please like and subscribe and share them with anyone who you think it might be useful for. This isolation valve looked a bit dodgy, so I thought I'd just shut the mains off and replace that at the same time. After it was off the mains, this toilet cistern, so it was easy enough to just shut it off in the road and then swap it all out. I always recommend isolating the water in the road where possible, as it just shuts everything off and prevents fiddling around with the internal stop taps, which are normally seized. Always make sure the water's off. And here's a view from above, which was quite handy that they cut this in, but it didn't make it too accessible for changing the flush pipe or anything underneath. Once you're inside the built-in furniture and get all the panels off, things do become a bit easier, as you can actually access, normally, most of the pipework. There are so many different styles of concealed cisterns. Some are bulky and they all have different sized buttons. This is a grower one, so I wanted to get the same cistern to marry up with the existing button, mainly the hole, because otherwise you'd have to cut a new hole. I got rid of the old isolation valve and put a new one in. As you can see here, the bracket is exactly the same, so I thought I'd just reuse the same one. What's quite useful with these is that the filling valve is reversible, so it came on the left and I just switched it over to the right. Where possible, I'll always replace the fibre washer on the inlet, just because relying on an old fibre washer is not worth the risk for the amount they cost. Don't always rely on the old flush pipe for being the correct size, because sometimes people might miscut them or cut them too short and then get lucky and it doesn't leak. So I often cut it a little bit longer than the original just to give me a bit of play, and then I can judge it once it's in. The old one was actually about the right size, so I did need to trim this one down, which wasn't an issue because it's better to be longer than shorter. The rubber flush cones are pretty good. I see people cake them in silicone, but I never find you really need it unless you're using an old one because you haven't got a new one. Then sometimes you might need a little bit of silicone, or if you're just trying to do a repair leak there and then. I didn't over tighten the isolation valve, and as you can see there's a slight leak from the top nut. This is why it's always critical to check your joints. It only needed a little bit of nipping up, but I didn't go too mad when I initially put it on, so a little nip up sorted out the leak. But you always want to check your joints, especially when it's in the built-in furniture like this one, because that would just leak and carry on leaking until bigger problems arise. I end up flushing these about 10 or 15 times for the same reason. If it leaks, you won't know until it's too late. One of the issues of built-in furniture. I don't really rate it, to be honest, because it all looks nice, but for maintenance it's a pain, and for leaks it can be troublesome and cause big problems, and they go unnoticed for long periods of time. I then cleaned off all the silicone around the pan. And all the silicone off the panel as well. Give it as good a clear up as you ever can. The brackets I removed off before, I didn't even put back on in the end because it was so tight in here that the silicone was just going to hold it anyway. And for any future maintenance, which it will need future maintenance, this is the best bet for it. Having the top free was quite a useful thing on this one because it just made it a little bit more accessible rather than having to fiddle through the front panel. I like to use the clear silicone where possible, as it's a bit more forgiving than white. As there was clear silicone on this one anyway, I thought I'd do the same. Using a spray bottle is just brilliant. I put soapy water in it and it just prevents the silicone from sticking where you don't want it to. And I use this little siliconing smoothing tool just to finish it off and give it those nice neat touches at the end. Works quite well. And that's how you replace a Grohe concealed cistern.